Hello, everyone. Chad Frantzen here. Welcome to the Kingdom Finance Show. I am so glad you're here for today's program. Hey, before I get started, I would like you to follow the show, subscribe, pass it along to other friends and family and coworkers who share Christian values in wanting to manage resources with clarity and wisdom as we're living in very uncertain times. Again, thanks so much for following the show. It helps us get the word out if you will like and subscribe it. So with that, let's get started on today's show. I'm going to tell you at the end how to get connected with our team at Wealth Builders Investments if you want some specific counsel on how to take what I'm going to talk about today and apply it to your personal life, to your business, to your ministry, to your family. Let me begin with this, a question. Are your finances being censored? Now, I ask that question because with the current news that's come out here recently with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and a lot of the things that are coming to light, we need to talk about censorship, and we need to talk about it in the vein of our finances and how we run our businesses and ministries. To be censored is a formal statement of disapproval. And it's not actually found in the Constitution as a term, and it's not in any resolution as well. Really, censorship is the act of blaming or condemning sternly when you look it up in Webster's dictionary. It's an official expression of disapproval. And really, censorship leads to misinformation, it leads to lies, and it leads to deception. Now, I want to start with some current events, and then I'm going to bring it down and apply it to us as kingdom-minded, faith-driven investors, entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders of what I believe is a call to action for us today. So it turns out that Republicans who had concerns about President Biden's administration's, their efforts to censor news is actually well-founded. In a stunning letter to the House Judiciary Committee, Meta, formerly Facebook, CEO Mark Zuckerberg, one of the top 10 wealthiest individuals in the world today, wrote that the Biden-Harris administration had pressured Facebook to censor content and then pushed harder against Meta after the company initially resisted the government's coercion. In fact, Zuckerberg released this letter recently saying that senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House itself, repeatedly, and this I quote from Zuckerberg, repeatedly pressured our team for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our team when we did not agree. That's an exact quote from Zuckerberg's letter, which was released to the House Judiciary Committee here recently in August of 2024. Zuckerberg went on to admit that Facebook made changes to COVID-related content and that his team was indeed responsible for doing so. He expressed regret for succumbing to government pressures to censor content. He said, "I believe government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it." Now, there's been a lot of media coverage of this, but it reminds us of even things that we have been curious about with big media and social media. It really reveals a truly double standard that the White House can not only weaponize government agencies, but that it can put a major social media company on the chopping block, demanding them to put out content in a certain manner that the government that's in control deems appropriate. That goes against every fiber of our being as the United States of America, of free speech, of our Bill of Rights. Thank God that Elon Musk bought Twitter, now X, and made it an independent free speech zone. But the fact that Zuckerberg has acknowledged this years after the fact, it shows that this is an ongoing problem, right? And this is not just with Facebook. We see this even with Google and Google searches and AI searches. The First Amendment was designed to protect free speech for all Americans. And the Biden administration, the Harris administration, has intentionally trampled on that right by forcing their hand on these big tech companies. Now, interestingly enough, the Democratic Party has become the party of big tech, of big pharma, of big banks, of actually more billionaires and celebrities support the Democratic Party than the Republican Party. The Democratic Party is no longer what it once was back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. The party that many people fought against big corporations and fought for good jobs and for the middle class. Well, I mean, the Facebook acknowledgement, it just gives us confirmation that, yeah, this has been going on, as many of us have suspected. It's not just isolated to Facebook. We're seeing it in Google, as I've already mentioned. And the idea that the government powers can actually control free speech through big media, right? The CNNs and MSNBCs of the world, but also social media, which is designed to be an open platform, is very scary. In fact, Zuckerberg, one final thought on what came out on Capitol Hill was he pointed to a specific letter, a specific issue in his letter. And he said that the FBI had warned Facebook, Meta, about a potential Russian disinformation operation before the 2020 election that involved the Biden family and Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company with ties to Hunter Biden. Now, we all know the laptop story and all that, but this warning was specifically given by the FBI to Facebook, according to Zuckerberg. After this warning, Facebook demoted or suppressed a New York Post news article about Hunter Biden's business entanglements. Zuckerberg said that they sent the story to fact checkers for review and they removed it from the Facebook platform while waiting for a reply. Now, we've also learned recently that the 51 CIA agents, former and current, that came out to produce this letter at the request of the White House during the 2020 election, that this laptop issue and all this information was a Russian disinformation operation to compromise the election of 2020. We now know that has completely been debunked. Now, I want to transition here because I could spend the whole time talking about that, but I wanted to present some current events and I want to apply it to us as kingdom-minded, faith-driven entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, stewards. So I come back to the question that I asked when we began the show. Are your investments, or let me say it this way, are your businesses being censored? Again, we talked about what the definition of that is, and we've got a great case in point of a big tech company, right? The Facebooks and Googles of the world. We know that the major media outlets are purely propaganda machines for the Democratic Party, but social media in and of itself, free speech, the ability to give your opinion, it's incredible the pressure that even professional athletes will face if they or their spouses like a post on social media that might favor Trump and Vance or the Republican Party. No longer do we have free speech without fear of people attacking us for merely our personal views or opinions. Now, I want to bring this down for the application. So I hope this is going to be helpful to you. I'm going to give you a way to apply this at the end of the program. Many of you have heard me talk about in the past that there was a recent Christianity Today magazine article a few years ago that profiled capital assets. We live in a capitalism democracy in the United States, a free market economy. At least that's how it's supposed to be. But the study showed that of dollars that were invested in the capital markets by Christians, either Christian individuals or churches or entities, institutions, that and it was a big amount, but only about 8 to maybe 9% of those dollars stewarded, invested by Christian businesses, entrepreneurs, organizations were in any way invested with a faith-driven, biblically minded framework. Okay. And of that 8 to 9%, most of them just did what's called a negative screen, which just says we're not going to support companies that support abortion or they're involved in human trafficking, things like that. And in fact, I've talked about another study that I've found even in my own industry, financial services, where we have Christian, any trade group, right? No matter what you're in, you have trade groups that are different affinity groups within your industry. And even in the financial services industry, we have some Christian financial advisor groups, right? Great way to network, to recruit, to collaborate with other Christian business owners, financial advisors, portfolio managers, planners, etc. Now, what I'm hearing is that even in these groups that are Christian affinity groups, trade groups within the financial services industry, the majority of the people in that group that are managing portfolios, giving professional advice, although it may be good advice and it may be suitable, right? It does not use a biblical framework, a faith-driven framework for being intentional with investing, using pro values, investing for human flourishing and impact on that. Now that's staggering. So what I want to talk about is, okay, what is it that we can do to make sure that our investments, our businesses are not censored? Okay, we could spend a whole hour on this. I want to really cover 3 things that you can do when you're managing financial resources to avoid being censored. In fact, how do you move against big tech, big banks, big pharma, Wall Street for their agenda? Now, bear in mind that Wall Street and the greed of corporate America, it is only out for their best interest. So whether that is some environmental idea about carbon credits, or whether that is some concept that has to do with everybody getting vaccines or the price of groceries, it rarely is going to benefit the middle class, you and I, on that. And certainly it's not going to benefit the working class on that. Okay, so let me explain 3 concepts. When it comes to selecting investment assets, financial resources, the first step is selection. Now, again, I quoted this study where the majority of people who had a Christian framework, right, Judeo-Christian beliefs, very few, 8 to 9%, actually used their values as part of their investment selection framework. So step 1 is selection. You need to have a pro-values focus of how you select capital assets. You need to be thinking the golden rule. You need to be thinking, how do I invest alongside public and private companies or investment opportunities that are actually utilizing servant leadership? They're actually looking at how can we aid in human flourishing to help our employees, to help our communities, to help our environment, to help conservation of creation that is in alignment with biblical values. This is what I call a pro-values approach. There are actually hundreds of public companies that put in chaplaincy inside their corporation. And studies have shown that that actually helps with profitability of the company. It helps people get through life. Can you imagine if a company has 10,000 employees, 50,000 employees, and they're committed to the well-being of their employees' family, not only financially, but just how well they're doing emotionally and mentally and in life with their family, that they pay to have chaplains at the manufacturing site, at the business location, to counsel, to listen, to help people as they go through problems. We all have issues that are going to happen, right? And so what a lot of these are public companies that I'm referencing, and many private companies do this also, but we're talking about selection, okay? There's 3 things we need to do to avoid our businesses and investments being censored. The first one is selection. We need to have a pro-values approach. What we do as business owners and entrepreneurs, we need to be servant leader focused. We need to be thinking the golden rule. How can we take care of our team? How can we take care of the vendors we work with? How do we select the vendors and suppliers? And especially for those that are on our payroll as employees or contract employees, how can we serve them? Because the more we can be thoughtful in how we bless our employees, how we bless our customers, our community, our suppliers, this is going to lead to more business growth. This is exactly what Jesus talked about when he talked about principles of money. This is going to lead to a 10x, 20x, 50x type of returns. Now, we're talking about here is how do you lead well? And so we have to walk in humility. We cannot walk with what the world walks in, which is this need, this insatiable need for greed, money, power, and influence. We have to have a servant leadership heart. And what's going to happen is our private shareholders or our public shareholders, if you're a public company, actually going to turn out better. Your profitability is going to go up. Your employee retention is going to go up. You're going to see what we call a double or triple bottom line, because it's not just about financial returns. It is, but it's about so much more. We're going to see an impact in our employees' families, in our communities, and even across the world with what we call human flourishing. What if you were committed to investing in companies, in strategies that were looking to help protect the environment, to find cures for incurable diseases, to end systemic poverty? What if we were investing alongside companies that were extremely profitable, treated their employees well, but actually looked at this triple bottom line? That is selection, okay? So that's getting away from investing in the Googles and the Facebooks of the world. Many people think they can't have a good long-term financial return if they're not in all the big tech companies. It is not true. I have multiple studies that show it. I can do a whole program on it, and I can send you some of these studies. All right, number 2 in the 3-step process. Again, number 1 was selection. We're talking about how to avoid censorship in our businesses and in our financial assets. Number 2 is voting. Now, yes, we need to be voting in all of our major elections, both at a local municipal level and at a federal level. And absolutely, we're recording this end of August 2024. We need to be voting our principles, our values, biblical truths at the November election. And so absolutely, we need to be voting pro-biblical values at the election box, both at a federal and a local level. It is imperative that we do that. We cannot allow the current administration and the philosophy of how to lead with big government and Marxist type policies. That is destroying our country, and it's also destroying Christianity. What I'm talking about for this particular point is voting with how our investment capital, how it is placed. And so in the investment world, when you invest in a publicly traded company, they have to file all these regulatory documents. They have annual shareholder meetings, right? And they issue what are called proxies. And so proxies are voting rights for every shareholder, whether you own 1 share of a company or whether you own 100,000 shares of a company. Proxies go out to all investors. Now, how many of you, if we were in a live setting, how many of you actually know if you vote proxies for your stocks, mutual funds, ETFs, 529s, 401ks, anything like that? I would wager that 90 to 95% of you do not know or are not voting your proxy. So what that means is at level 2 of voting, we have abdicated, just like Adam, we've abdicated some of our authority. We have abdicated voting to BlackRock and the BlackRocks of the world, right? So if you own a stock or a mutual fund or an ETF, the manager, the fund, by default is going to be voting your shareholder proxy. And what we don't realize, and this is true even for churches and ministries that have retirement plans, is your votes are being given to the BlackRocks of the world to vote however they see fit. Now, a totally separate show. I've talked about this before, but the BlackRocks and the big proxy voters, they're not voting for pro values. They're not voting for pro life. They're not voting again. Believe me, they're voting for a very liberal agenda on what they want to see happen. And so, selection is important. I've already talked about that, but voting is also important. You need to have, as part of your business strategy and in your financial investing strategy, you need to have a policy in place, a procedure in place that you or someone you have hired, assigned to vote your proxies for public and private companies. And why that's important is that is how policies get put into place. Okay. And I'm going to talk about the third step, which goes in line with this. But when a board puts together a suggestion for implementing policies, DEI policies, or more woke liberal policies, or abortion benefits as part of HR, it goes through a proxy voting process. Extremely important. So if you are investing in financial capital assets and you're working with a financial advisor, a financial planner, whatever we want to call people in my industry, you need to ask them, are they voting your proxies? And are they voting your proxies in a way that align with your personal values? If you don't have the answer, then you need to consider making a change, okay? The vast majority of us do not vote our values through the investments we make. So that's point number 2, right? Voting your proxies. You're voting as a shareholder of public or private companies. Extremely important. All right, number 3, advocacy. Advocacy is the part that is before an initiative gets on a proxy vote at a board meeting. Advocacy is engaging in the dialogue. We have to engage in the conversation as Christian entrepreneurs, business owners, and investor. We need to engage with culture, with the dialogue of what's important. Now, remember, this whole gender confusion and transgenderism, it was not an issue even 5 years ago. I mean, if you go back pre-COVID, 2018, 2019, this was not a thing. This was not a thing that was being talked about at all. So this is a stronghold of the enemy that's demonic, that's come over the land, that's creating confusion in people, right? They're not sure. And, this has become a conversation in the world of advocacy. So at the center of public conversation, we need to be having honest conversations in humility with both sides of this argument. But you look at the number of public companies that have implemented DEI policies, transgender policies, you name it, particularly 2020, 2021, this started really happening because there was no advocacy, there was no conversation in the public marketplace with people with conservative values, with Judeo-Christian values about, now why are we doing this in the education system? So why are we going to put feminine hygiene products in boys' bathrooms? And so that's part of how we got to this point. There has to be a dialogue. So there's many advocacy groups that are out there that are engaging in these conversations, right? And even look here recently in the summer of 2024, we've seen many public companies who have retracted from their very woke HR DEI policies. We saw even the state of Texas, Governor Abbott, where I'm from, state of Texas, and graduate of Texas A&M University, that they required that all public state schools had to retract their these very liberal woke policies from their HR systems, from these DEI quotas for hiring and things like that. So public companies, even here in the last couple of months, big companies, Ford Motor, Tractor Supply, John Deere, Jack Daniels, And the list goes on. Their CEOs, right? They've been engaged in the advocacy conversation. They're recognizing that these are not really good policies for the profitability of our company, for our business models. All of those companies I just mentioned, Ford, Tractor Supply, John Deere, and others, they have publicly, you can go out and search this, they are retracting these very liberal policies from their company because they're not working. They're creating more harm than good, and they're recognizing this is not good for their shareholders on that. Expect that trend to continue. But this is level 3, advocacy. We have to be involved in the conversation for principles in the marketplace. Okay, so again, in closing, let me summarize here for today's show. If we want to avoid being censored in our investments and in our businesses, we have to be really involved in the selection of what we do, the voting, and the advocacy. And there are many good examples of this out there. If we can be a company, whether you are a business owner or you're just an investor, let's be about putting culture first, where we demonstrate that, that we demonstrate the golden rule that if we take care of our customers, our suppliers, our employees in a way that is really honoring of Christ, that these values are going to come through, that people will flourish, that the environment can flourish, and that, shareholders are actually going to be better off because you're going to be more profitable in the marketplace. You're actually going to attract talent because you care about your people and your community and the earth, and that's going to lead to higher employee retention and higher profit margins on that. If there was a world where we can invest in companies where we have faith-driven CEOs with excellent, if not exceptional, corporate culture that not only seeks to outperform, but seeks to help employees flourish, that would be a good solution. Well, let me close with this. And then I'll share with you how, if you want to take some next steps on really evaluating your financial plan for your business, for your ministry, for your family, I'm going to give you a way to do that. The now made public admission of Zuckerberg at Meta Facebook proves what many of us suspected all along. This, along with the Hunter Biden laptop fiasco of 2020 that the CIA agents have now acknowledged was a false cover-up, things are not what they seem. We live in a world at war, a world of deception, of greed and control that is under the hand of the Prince of Darkness. Your freedoms, my freedoms, are at risk. Let's be very clear about that. Censorship, misinformation, deception, and false narratives from leaders, politicians, big media, social media, they have become the norm. In fact, the news cycle moves so fast that you don't even realize what's happening. And what is to come of this supposed investigation into the Trump assassination attempt? We'll leave that for another time to talk about, but this all goes in line with the misinformation, the deception, and the censorship. Now, allow me to apply these current topics to how we should, as Christ followers, manage our businesses, walk in our entrepreneurship, and invest financial resources. There really is a better way. And it's a narrow way, as Jesus said. It will not be easy. And not everyone who calls themselves a Christian will make it through this way. Businesses, entrepreneurship, financial assets, they need to be led with a prevailing principle that aligns their values with the Bible, with Christ. And the values of the decision maker, that's you, that's me, we get to make these decisions in the world of capitalism, in the world of whatever part that we play. Servant leadership, putting employees, your community, and the environment first, seeking what is good for human flourishing. These are the tenets that we must subscribe to and be committed to. It needs to be congruent with the Word of God. It's not just about a financial bottom line for your business, your ministry, or you personally. It's what we call a triple bottom line. And we need to, when we think about key performance indicators, KPIs, it should not be focused only on money, power, and influence. In the kingdom of God, it is about wise financial stewardship. We see the parable of the shrewd manager and the parable of the talents, but it's also about renewing our mind, as Romans 12:1 talks about. And it's also ultimately, as Jesus said when he started his ministry, Isaiah 61, it's about healing the brokenhearted and setting captives free. I want to encourage you to stand together with me. Let's become a company of kingdom-minded entrepreneurs and investors who can actually stand out in the public marketplace, in the private marketplace, and be a light to this growing darkness of censorship. If you'd like to learn more about how to start down this path, I want to invite you to connect with our advisory team at Wealth Builders Investments. In fact, after the show, you can schedule a complimentary call with myself and my team just to evaluate where you are personally, professionally, in your business on making a kingdom impact plan a reality. To do that, you can visit wealthbuilders.net/invest. That's wealthbuilders.net/invest. And our team you'll be able to schedule, you'll get a free download on our Pro Values Index, and you'll also be able to just schedule a complimentary call. We'd love to talk with you offline. Again, I can't give you specific advice on a program like this. What I'm hoping to do as we wrap up today's show is just educate you and motivate you to want to walk more with Christ as you steward what he's given you. All of you have different levels of gifts and measures and resources and influence, but I do believe we're called to be a light against censorship today. And if we're not careful, then we will be subject to being censored and subject to the deception that we've talked about today. But again, I believe the opportunity is vast. I believe wherever you are in business, whether it's for-profit, not-for-profit, I believe each of us have an amazing opportunity to take the resources God has given us and actually create a kingdom-minded financial plan to make a difference in the world. I don't know about you, but I want to be part of that 8% that is using a faith-driven mindset for how we manage businesses and how we manage investment resources. In fact, I'd like to see that 8% get up much higher. So let's be part of the change. And I really appreciate you being here on today's episode of the Kingdom Finance Show. Again, if you want to learn more on how to apply these three principles, again, the selection, the voting, and the advocacy for creating a kingdom-minded financial plan that can fight against being censored, please connect with our team, Wealth Builders Investments. That'll be wealthbuilders.net/invest. Thanks again for being a part of the program today. Please like and subscribe the Kingdom Finance Show. Share it with your friends. It really helps us get the word out, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much for joining me today on the Kingdom Finance Show. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review. It really helps to get the word out. For more resources on becoming a Kingdom investor and to connect with us directly, visit our website at wealthbuilders.net. That's wealthbuilders.net. We'll see you next time on the Kingdom Finance Show. The content provided is for educational purposes only. We encourage you to seek personalized investment advice from your financial professional. For all tax and legal advice, please consult your CPA or attorney. Investment advisory services are offered through Authentic Counsel, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cabin Securities, a registered broker-dealer. The content of this podcast does not constitute an offer of securities. Offerings can only be made through an offering memorandum, and you should carefully examine risk factors and other information contained in the memorandum.